Hi everybody, welcome to the Manifold channel. Today we're going to continue our action-packed series of videos on the new join dialog. We're going to do the fourth in the series, and we're going to learn about doing joins into queries. Now the join dialog, as most people know, can use a variety of tables or queries as sources for the join table, to take data from them and put them into the target table. But what a lot of people don't know, and what is a really cool feature, is that the Manifold join dialog can also join data into a query, that is, going through a query back into the tables that query refers to. And we're going to see how that works. We're going to use these two sample tables here. Here's the titles table, which has a bunch of book titles. And for every book title, it has a publisher ID, giving the ID of the publisher, but it doesn't have the name of the publisher here. We'd like to add the name of the publisher. And we'd like to take it from this publishers table here, which also has a public ID, so obviously that's going to be the key field that's common to both. And we're going to take the pub name from this publishers table here and put into the publisher field here in this table there, in the titles table. Now, like I said, we could either do this directly through a join between the two tables, but let's say we want to do it through a query, because a query might do something more sophisticated. For example, joining into only those records which are selected, or some other sort of really super clever processing that you can do in queries. So let's see how that works. We're going to create a query for this titles table here, and I'm going to call that. I'm going to right click into the project pane and choose create. Let's see where this new query. Okay, that's cool right there. And we're going to call that titles. Let's use lowercase. Titles query. Click create query, and there we've done it. We've now created an empty query called titles query. Let's enter some text into that. So I'm going to pop that open by double clicking on it. I'm going to undock the command pane that it launches. And for the query text, let's move this guy out of the way here, and let's move this down here. I'm going to work with undock pane since we have kind of a cramped layout here to fit into the video. And off screen I have a components pane, a comments pane that's open, from which I'm going to copy and I'll paste the query text that I want to use, so I don't have to spend any time here keyboarding it out or selecting it. We're going to select the title ID, the title name, the publisher ID, and the publisher field from titles, and that's going to be our query. If I want to run this, you can see what it does. It just generates those fields right there. Now, we can see that this is a writable results table. Manifold will automatically expose indices and things like that from within the tables that are used in a query. So the result and results table is writable. So for example, here in the number one field, we can enter Abatis, publishers. And you can see it immediately pops up in this table. We're actually writing through the query because the query is writable. When we change data here, let's delete that, turn it back to null. It actually updates the originating table. That's an extremely useful feature of Manifold, and part of having a fully articulated SQL engine like Manifold has. Okay, let's keep on going. And what we're now going to do is we're going to use this query in a join operation. When we enter the text into this query, it actually is entered into this component here. With the focus on the query, what I can do is I can click Edit and choose Join. And now you can see the join dialog is using the titles query as the so-called original table. I'm going to choose the pub ID field as the join field to use, the key field to use. And here I want to use the publishers table as the joined table. That is the source for the join, and also linking on the publisher ID field. Now, what we want to do is we want to send data, taking advantage of the join operation, from the publisher's data into this titles query. You can't change the fields in the query because those are set by the SQL in the query, but what you can do is you can use an existing field like this publisher's field here. So I'm going to double click on that and choose pub name. That is, I want to take the pub name, copy what's in that through the join operation, put it into publisher. I'm going to check the box here to save the update query. I'm going to click join operation, and like magic, the join operation happened, and it went through this this query and immediately put the data into that titles table there. If I want to rerun the query, I can see that this also shows me everything that happened there that it did. Now, if I want to change some of the things here, for example, let's say some of these fields disappear, get back to null, and let's do this one here too. When I rerun this saved query, it reruns that operation. So it redoes the join through the query, and it does that join through the query whether or not the query is open or not. It doesn't have to be open through the query. Let's do that again. Let's get rid of ease of use press here, and let's rerun that query. And you can see it still updates all that. All right, let's let's do something else that's kind of interesting, and I'm going to turn all these back to nulls using that simple operation there. And so let's start again with nulls, and now let's create a different type of query here. We're going to create a query that works with selection. So I'm going to create choose new query again, and I'm going to call this one titles selection. We're using release 9 here, of course, and all this works in the free viewer. I'm following along on the in the example from the edit join topic. And let's double click this query open, and let's put some query text into it. And the query text that I'm going to use for this one is a very simple snippet of SQL, and it just says table call selection titles true. And what this does is that basically will repeat all the fields. And let's open this up a little bit here, and I'll click launch, I'll click run, and it's empty because there's no selections in here. But if I select a few of the what do you call it, the records here, and I run this query again, as you can see, it shows me all those records that have been selected. And I want to arrange these various columns here. So let's show you how you can do that. You can actually do that best fit title on a results table using the layers pane. As you can see, all this manifold command interfaces is very, very orthogonal. I mean, everything works pretty much the way you expect it to work, even in those sorts of unexpected connections, like using the layers pane to alter the title arrangement in a results table for a query. That still works just fine. All right, with the focus on the query title selection, once again, we choose edit, join, and once again, we're going to choose the pub ID field. And here we're going to choose publishers as there with the pub ID field as a key field. And here, for the publisher field, we're going to choose pub name. And so what this is going to do is it's going to do this join of the data in the publishers table, getting the name of each publisher out of the pub name field. And here we see the pub name field down here. And it's going to put it into the publishers field through the query into the titles table. Now, because it's going to go through the query, it's only going to do that. I'll click Save Update Query. It's only going to do that for those records which are selected. So let's click Join Component and see what happens. As you can see, what it did is it only updated those which are selected. So let's say we clear the selection, deselect all, put the focus on this window and deselect all. And now let's say we select a couple of others. And here what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this one to null, I'm going to turn that one to null, and that one to null as well. So now it's only going to update those records which are selected when I rerun this selection update query that I saved. So I'm going to right click on that and choose run, and you can see it only redid the ones that are selected. So dynamically, whichever ones I choose to be selected, those are the ones that are going to get updated by the update query. Click run, and there it updates those. I think you'll agree that this opens the door to a tremendous amount of power, because there's literally nothing that you can, and here let's bring the comments component up from which I was copying and pasting. There's almost nothing you can't do with SQL. I mean, you can do an amazing amount of stuff within SQL. And of course, within Manifold, you can also do things like inline scripts within SQL as well. So this is a complete open door, and this is a way of using the power of join and the power of update queries from join to handle, to harness whatever you've done inside that query. And if you take an actual look at the update query itself that Manifold wrote for us, let's undock that to take a closer look. You can see that the update query is extremely simple. It basically looks the same as an update query would between tables, except that it's going into this query, which is named right here, and that query has the selection logic in it. This query that does the update doesn't have to know anything about that selection logic, because all that happens, all that's encapsulated, within this snippet of SQL. And if this snippet of SQL wasn't just a snippet, but it was many lines of SQL, it would still be encapsulated just within the name of the query. So that keeps the update queries very simple and small. If you look at the other query, what that looks like, let's double click that open and take a look. You can see that has a similar structure. It's also extremely simple. It's just the titles query. Again, what the specifics of what that query does inside the query is all encapsulated within the query, and the actual update query itself is very, very simple. So all that compartmentalization and orthogonality makes it possible to handle fairly complex systems and fairly complex relationships to get done whatever you want to get done with a combination of a little bit of SQL and a combination of the ease of point-and-click dialogues like the edit join dialog. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.